Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to share ways to stop worrying. Hi, I'm Casey Lepper. I'm a licensed psychotherapist working with couples and individuals, as well as a spiritual teacher and guide. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Today, I wanted to talk about ways to stop worrying. And I wanted to do this from a psychological and mental perspective, as well as a soulful and spiritual perspective. If you're watching this channel, you may have noticed I really like to weave ancient spiritual tradition teachings along with contemporary psychology, because in my own life and a lot of the clients that I've worked with, I found when you weave these together, it creates a strong body, a strong mind, a strong heart, and soul. And so every tip I'm going to go through, there's going to be a blend of the psychological along with the spiritual. I think worrying is a really important topic because a lot of us spend so much mental energy in forecasting the worst case scenario. And some people even say they're just being pragmatic, that they want to get ahead of the problem, that it prepares them. But the truth is if in the present moment we're worrying about something, that we're worrying about something in the future, or we're worrying about something that we did, it takes really important energy away from us, that we start to react in a way that is predicting the worst case scenario. So if I am afraid of something, say I'm afraid that a client I'm talking to says no to an offer I'm giving them, then how I approach that conversation is going to be very different than if I am just neutral about it or hopeful about it. And so all of us have this tendency to get really stuck in what we don't want to happen. And the truth is either we're focused on what we want or we're focused on what we don't want. And if you're focused on what you don't want, the energy that you're bringing into every situation, opportunity, environment, person, place is going to be different than if you have hope, excitement, eagerness, or passion. And so all of these ways is going to help you deconstruct some of that patterning so you can approach life with excitement rather than negativity. The first strategy that's really helpful to reduce worrying is a mindfulness and present awareness approach. Because worry is usually focused on the past or the future, we're not giving ourselves the opportunity to really be present. And so most of our problems really do live in the past or in the future. And so if you notice that you're feeling dysregulated or you're worrying about something, you have to ask yourself, is there anything I can do now to make this better? And if you can, then do the thing that will make it better. If you can't, then you have to let it go and just be present. And I find that question more often than not takes me back to center. So if I know I have a busy week ahead and I'm going to be away from my kids a lot, then I might look at my calendar and I might think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so busy. But it's Saturday. So why am I worried about what's going to happen on Monday? And through experience of doing this exercise, it's never as bad as you think it's going to be, as long as you're present. So that question again is there anything I can do in this moment to make this better? And if it's no, you have to let it go. Distract yourself with something else. Do something else. Be really present of your current surroundings. And that's going to help reduce how much mental energy you're spending worrying. So some mindfulness techniques is all about being able to use all 5 of your senses in the present moment. I love to use this with eating. So a lot of times if I'm really, really busy, then I'm thinking about the next thing. And that's when I get worried about running late or missing an appointment or what am I going to say to this client? But as long as I'm present and then I'm really focusing on my 5 senses, it's so much easier to stay in a really peaceful state of being. There's an equanimity when you are really present. And so the next time you feel a little worried, if you're listening to music, then stop everything and listen to the music. Like listen, not in a superficial way, but a deep way. What instruments are playing? What are the sounds? What's the melody? What are the lyrics? How often we're just moving so fast that we're not even focusing on one of our senses, much less five. If you're eating, don't be on your phone when you're eating. Think about what it is that you're tasting. What do you feel in your body? Like, what's the energy of the room feel like? What are you hearing? What are you tasting? What are you seeing? If I get in a little bit of an anxious state, one thing I'll do is I'll go outside and I'll just look at all the shades of green, all the different shapes of leaves, all the sounds of the birds or whatever sound is around you. And so the present awareness and the mindfulness is really helpful at stopping the mind from its incessant chatter. The mind is always trying to move and create problems that don't really exist. So practice mindfulness and being present. My second tip to reduce worrying is being able to reframe your thoughts and beliefs. So if you're worried about something, say you're really worried about money and you don't know if you're going to have enough money to pay your bills, and you've already gone through strategy 1 where you're just being present and it's still not going away, then really consider what you're thinking, feeling, and believing about money. A lot of times we worry about the same things over and over because we have a subconscious belief that's keeping that pattern there. It's just like an algorithm that as soon as you see a cute animal video, then all of a sudden your algorithm is cute animal videos. That's how quickly our subconscious comes in. And so if you have wounds surrounding money or relationships or time or fear of failure, perfectionism, you're most likely going to worry about those things. And if you do a little digging, if you write down, what are all my thoughts about money? What are all my beliefs about money? What are my personal experiences around money? You're going to start to see a pattern that's keeping you locked in this program that isn't even necessary. So we think and feel and do the same things over and over. A lot of times we don't even realize it, but this is the loop of our life that if we think the same, we're going to feel the same. If we think the same and feel the same, we're probably going to do the same thing. And then through time, that becomes a rigid belief structure. And so being able to deconstruct this is both psychological and, to me, spiritual. I've always said that you can't transcend the mind with the mind. And if you're able to go into your mind and you're able to organize it and clean it out, then you can start to see your patterns. So I know my triggers. I know where they come from. I know the program that just, gets activated as soon as I go into it. And so I don't have to spend a lot of time worrying or in anxiety before I can start to correct it. And so practically speaking, if you notice you have thought patterns, subconscious beliefs, or just patterns that are holding you back, then you have to look at what those thoughts are and you have to replace the thoughts. And this can feel really, can be really slow for people because it is a practice. But if you just start to implant new thoughts, new feelings, new beliefs, then at some point that's going to take hold. And so I think about this work as, and like you're going into a really messy closet that you just keep putting all the stuff. And one day you clean it all out. Sometimes when you start to take it all out, you realize how big of a project it really is. But once you get organizing, it makes all life easier. And so I really think that this work is very, very important to all self-development. And for me personally, I don't think it's something that just sits on the psychological layer. I think if you want to get to the subconscious, you have to connect to the spiritual aspect of the work, because you need to be connected to this greater form of who you are. So then when you're looking at these, personality programs or these subconscious beliefs, you're going to have enough space where you can really change it. A third strategy to help you reduce worrying is being able to prioritize self-care and relaxation techniques. So a lot of times we worry more when we're in a state of stress. Cortisol really contracts the whole system, like our body, our mind, and our heart. And on all levels, we feel contracted. And when we're in that contracted state, we're more likely to perpetuate worrying, nervousness, anxiety. And so if you find yourself dysregulated or worrying a lot, then you have to ask where you're not taking care of yourself. So if you've ever thought about, say going to like a spa environment where you're being taken care of, the music is nice and soft, and you're feeling really warm and comfortable. Usually that has the ability, that atmosphere, and through our five senses, it has an ability to pull us down, where hopefully we're a little calmer. And so if someone isn't sleeping well, if they're not eating nutritiously, if they're not doing anything to really replenish themselves, then we start to get a little hardened. And as a result, our minds goes in that direction. So we have to incorporate some sort of self-care relaxation technique to help us. For me personally, exercise is my primary way. I can have a really active mind, which means I can lean into worrying. And so if I feel like I'm stressing about something and it's connected to some of my subconscious beliefs, I try to get a lot of the energy out through exercise. And for me, that can look like running or high intensity. I know for some people, yoga feels like the best way for them to, get some of that energy out. So you have to ask yourself what's going to suit your style and then commit to it. There's so much research that shows exercise is the best antidepressant that we have. And so before turning to Lexapro or something, if it's not chronic, then try to engage in a regular exercise routine, and it's going to help so much. It gets energy out, it gets us focused on something, and it allows us to really step out of that mental formation. When it comes to relaxation techniques, there's been a lot of new trends and research connected to breath work. And so when we're stressed or we're anxious, we're usually breathing really shallow. We're not having that diaphragm breathing. And so there's so many breathing techniques that can help bring down the nervous system. One is called the box breathing, where you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold for 4 seconds, and you breathe out for 4 seconds. And then there's other strategies that have a little different time. So it could be breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 5 seconds, breathe out 6 seconds. There's many others that you could probably search on YouTube that have more expertise than I do about all the breathing techniques. But breath and deep breathing is really good for the nervous system, and it calms the mind. Another strategy is meditation. And so many people are so resistant to meditation, but it is one of those tools that if you're able to do it, it is like enhancing your immune system. So anytime you run into a virus or a bacteria, you are so much better suited to go through it without getting infected. And so people say that they don't really have time for meditation. And I have a hard time sitting for meditation, but if you meditated, you would have more time. You wouldn't be so worried. And the more I dove into my spiritual path and received different healings and engaged in more of like meditation practices, I noticed I never worried about time. I wasn't worried about being late. Before, I would look at the clock and say, I need to leave in 4 minutes. I need to leave in 2 minutes. I need to leave in 1 minute. And then I get into the car in this contracted state. When you start to meditate, you start to realize you're going to flow. And if I wasn't looking at the clock so often and telling myself what I needed to do or how much time I had left that was putting me in the contracted state, I was probably going to, it just saves more time. And so if you feel like you're too busy and you don't have enough time, you're probably someone who really needs to meditate. And if you give yourself 15 minutes in the morning and the evening, I say after 2 weeks consistently, you'll see such a huge difference, and you'll feel like you are approaching life and it's all the necessary struggles you have to go through with a much more grounded energy system. The fourth strategy is shifting perspective and attention on what you can control. When we are forecasting the future or we're dwelling in the past, usually we're focused on the pieces that we can't control. Either we're not present enough and it's a week away, so we really don't have much control over it, or it's something that has already happened. And so if you've taken it again through the first exercise, which is, can I do anything right now to positively impact this? If you can't, you have to ask yourself what control you have. A lot of times, people who lean to be more anxious or worried tend to also have control issues. So the type A personality has so much energy, they move so fast, But ultimately, it's because they're trying to control it because they have fear. And there's a lot of things that we can control. We can control our minds with enough practice. We can control where we put our energy and effort, but we can't control what someone else is going to do. We can't control the traffic jams. We can control how early we leave. And so it's being able to realize, what do you really have responsibility over? And a lot of us do have a lot of the responsibility when it comes to how we're thinking and how we're feeling, but we can't be so attached to outcome. And I think this is where the spiritual perspective can really come in to help, that you have to have a level of trust or faith that things are going to be okay. If you're running late for the meeting and you realize you should have left 10 minutes earlier, but this traffic jam was unexpected, what is the worst that's going to happen? You have to let go of the fear of maybe being judged or having a negative consequence, because ultimately you're giving yourself the worst poison of being in a high state of stress long term. People who are stressed or worried will never reach a level of self-actualization because they're so focused on problems that aren't real that they're never going to get to the problems that are real. If we want to live life and reach a level of potential, we have to be dedicated to focusing on what is a real issue and how to overcome that real issue. I have a friend who spends a lot of time worrying. We kind of joke that she's like a fly, where she's, stressed and flying around, and then she'll land briefly, but then she'll fly back up and land back down. And I think this picture, this metaphor really indicates how a lot of us are moving. It's that we're not really growing where we're planted. We're not stable and rooted enough to really get to the work that's needed to be able to reach that potential and grow. And so if you feel like you're focused so much on controlling outcomes, it suggests that there might be something in your personal history that you need to clear up. I love control. I still do. I've had many lessons about relinquishing control. It's one of the greatest areas of my work. Mine comes from trying to control my environment as a child. And the thing about acknowledging where it comes from, acknowledging the subconscious patterns, acknowledging that tendency means I'm really aware that this is an illusion that I'm creating for myself, that I know what I can control, and I'm going to control my thoughts. I'm going to try to not go into the pattern that I know is just going to make me more stressed. And that's the piece I can control. And all else you can surrender. And the people that have the hardest time surrendering tend to be the people who worry the most. And so just ask, what can you do to surrender? What would it feel like to surrender? And I think there's been some situations in our recent history that's really brought up this idea of what control do we really have? COVID is a really good example where people thought there was a level of normalcy and expectation, and that loss of attachment brought a lot of fear to people. And the people who were able to take that situation and make the most of it tended to be the people who understand that there's some things we can control and some things that we can't. And if you're just holding yourself responsible to having the best state of mind and the best practices, so you're not getting into the loop of everyone else, you're going to see that benefit you in so many different areas of life. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.